Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bullied Nostalgia Podcast. I am Tim.
A little lost there, Dad?
I all of a sudden remember that I had some fun introductions, but then I was like, oh, that's not for this episode. That's for a different episode.
Whoa, you've been saving introductions for future episodes?
Yes, so. I'm Tim.
Wow, how far ahead have you planned?
Oh, my goodness. And I'm joined by John.
Sorry, I was going to answer, but then I thought about how I plan to answer 6 episodes from now.
And Chance.
Whoa, who's that guy? He sounds handsome.
And Kylan. Okay. Whatever.
I thought it was funny.
We really need to workshop these intro calls.
Yeah, this is going to be the most painful episode ever. Our podcast is about watching movies that John and I grew up with and then giving an opportunity for Chance and Kai to revisit them alongside us and tell us what they're actually like, whether or not we're looking at them through rose-colored glasses. This is our Christmas episode, but before we get into it, I do want to make sure that everybody knows that if you want to recommend a show for us to do, or you have questions, the things that we don't hit in the podcast on the episode you're listening to, we do come back and do questions in our last episode of the season. So make sure you hit us up at bulliedpod@gmail.com. That's bullied as in being mean, and pod as in too lazy to write podcast @gmail.com.
Just as a question really quick. This is our Christmas episode. We have a Halloween theme song, but we don't have a Christmas theme song.
It's just the Aliens' first Christmas theme song.
I could cut that in. That would be pretty funny, actually.
Just the entire Aliens' first Christmas theme song?
I was going to say, we don't have a theme song for Halloween. Mm-hmm. We have a theme song for repressed nostalgia.
But we do repressed nostalgia at Halloween.
Yeah.
Great now we got to make Christmas nostalgia.
Now we got to make merry nostalgia.
Is this nutmeg nostalgia?
Yeah.
Bullied nutmeg.
I don't like that.
Bullied eggnog.
I was with you the entire way and you immediately lost me.
Moist eggnog.
Okay, I can get behind all of these ideas.
A train fire.
Yeah, this has been a terrible start to the episode.
I bought some eggnog today, but it's not my first carton. That's probably my 6th
carton.
You're 6
probably my
deep?
6th carton.
Okay, I'm pulling back the curtain right now. We are recording this in October. This is insane. You drank 6 cartons?
No. This is his 6th. He's drank 5.
John, when did you buy the other 5?
You have a way of really exaggerating things. I have not even started the 6th.
John just drank 24 cartons before this recording.
John, when did they start selling eggnog? How have you bought so many? Really?
Okay, so what's your story, John?
Oh, just that they're out of regular eggnog, so I had to resort to light eggnog when I bought it today.
As opposed to heavy eggnog.
Yeah, light is like
yeah, that's terrible.
Version.
Or I might leave it in because I said that.
Yeah, I'm here for quantity over quality, okay?
All right, so let's start the show.
Now they're the aliens next door, and they don't quite know the score. Nothing is the same for the peoples anymore. It's the alien Christmas.
This Christmas episode, we tackled the 1990 animated Christmas movie, The Nutcracker Prince. Before we talk about it, did everyone remember this movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember the first half.
So this is a movie that's a little different than a lot of the stuff we tackle. Everyone had seen this movie at some point in their lives. Chance, do you want to try and summarize what this movie is?
Oh boy. The Nutcracker movie follows a kind of reminiscent plotline to the actual Nutcracker ballet. It's a story about two siblings, mainly about Clara, the elder sister. And the story goes that her uncle Drosselmeyer bestows upon her a nutcracker. And then he tells a story about a boy being turned into a nutcracker. In the middle of the night, Claire is then visited by some strange magic, seemingly spurred on by her uncle, which transport her into a world of the dolls she knows coming to life and fighting against the Mouse King and his subjects. There he meets the charming and handsome Prince of the Dolls, the Nutcracker himself, a couple other doll characters, and then they go on adventures to try and defeat the Mouse King and save their friends.
Chance, you said it doesn't follow the ballet too closely, right?
Yeah.
So, little does John know, him assigning me to the role of the trolls in the previous... him assigning me to that last episode has kind of given me a new precedence for what my job is. And so now I'm like history person, I guess. And I can tell you for a fact, this movie follows very closely to the original novel and thus ballet.
So, Kai, was there any trolls in the history of the Nutcracker?
Surprisingly, no.
In the last episode, I said I was looking forward to this episode because I remembered it being pretty good animation.
The version that we had to watch.
Yeah, we watched a really bad quality one on YouTube, that's for sure. The animation's got some good stuff to it, but it is very simplistic, and I quickly remembered how boring this movie is.
Yeah.
But I do want to throw it over to John real quick here, because Kai and I were hanging out the one day. I get a phone call from John. He's super excited to tell me how much nostalgia he's making his way through. Essentially, Emma and Chance came over and they told him that they had started watching Lost, which got him super excited and thinking back to all his favorite Lost episodes and characters and story arcs. And then they watched the Nutcracker Prince together, and then that brought back a flood of nostalgia of when he used to play some of this stuff on piano. So I'd really like to throw it over to you, John, and just give us all the feels.
All the feels. How can I communicate feelings through my words to our listeners? Yes.
Do you think that portrayed?
Well, G sharp, B, E, F flat.
Yeah, after watching this movie, I feel like I kind of have this theory on nostalgia. I don't know. It's like how much nostalgia you have for something, kind of like connected to how young you were, how many times you watched it, what emotions were brought up when you watched it. So watching this movie, it is definitely one of the movies that I felt the most amount of emotions watching in a very positive way. What was really weird about it is I remembered all my childhood emotions. I wouldn't just see a scene and be like, oh, this is how that scene makes me feel. It's like, I remember how I felt as a kid. So, for instance, I remember being really upset with the annoying younger brother when he broke the Nutcracker's teeth.
Fitz
What's
is
his
a
name
jerk.
again? It's really annoying.
Yeah.
Fritz. Yeah.
I will say that neither of the kids are very likable.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's true.
But continue,
Clara's
John.
not
I would
likable?
say most of the characters in this movie are not likable.
I said neither of the siblings are likable.
I
Claire...
would say the parents are likable.
the older
they
sister,
seem like
the older sister.
genuinely
No,
nice
the older
people.
sister gives no reason to dislike her, but Clara's just mean to her. She just imitates her, makes fun of her, takes every chance she can to just rip into this older sister who seems completely oblivious to it.
Yeah, I don't really know what the point of making Clara make fun of her older sister. It never really turned into anything.
I only had roughly 20 minutes of research. I couldn't find the original novel and read it. But I feel like a lot of the things in this are holdovers from that novel that just never followed through in this movie.
When you said you were going to go from your 20 minutes of research. I really thought you were going to be like, well, in my opinion, I'm pretty sure that Clara's older sister is actually a figment of her imagination.
Yeah,
because she's
so-
in a coma.
It's
She fell out of a Christmas tree house.
My guess is that she's an agent of the Fluppy Empire. Yeah.
All right, John, so tell us
Yes.
more. So he bites the cannonball, breaks the Nutcracker. You were mad at
So that's one emotion I remember. I remember the queen making her cake, and it suddenly gets eaten by a whole bunch of rats, and she's just crying so much that she's actually swimming in her own tears. So I just remember as a kid feeling so sad for her. She put so much work into it and felt so disgusted by all those rats making it unedible.
I remember when I
What?
watched this movie, I've never been more interested and equally disinterested to try a food before, but when they bring out the blue cheesecake, I'm like, that sounds disgusting, but cheesecake is good. Would that be good? I'm like, I have no desire to eat this, but I'm also so curious.
Time to do some research, baby.
In this film, there's this backstory of how the Nutcracker became a toy. There was this evil queen and her son. Eventually the queen dies and the son becomes the Rat King. But the queen, at some point, she bites a princess's toe to make the princess ugly. And she uses a scary curse voice. So I remember as a kid being really scared when the Rat Queen used that voice. I remember feeling really mad with the royalty because the Nutcracker ends up saving the prince. He turns her beautiful again. But then royalty has no gratitude for him.
I have a question about that scene. It seems to imply that whole scene was a flashback.
But
Yeah.
when did it happen?
Yeah, Uncle Drosselmeyer looks to be the same age, which he's a magical creature, so maybe it happened 200 years before.
For those who don't really know much about this, it should be noticed that Uncle Drosselmeyer, although he's a clockmaker, he's also a magician. So he could be a wizard and like 300 years old, we don't know. He's not technically their uncle. It's just what everyone calls him.
So
Yes, in the flashback that Chance referenced, Drosselmeyer's nephew or apprentice or both gets turned into a Nutcracker doll when he saves a princess from a curse. The implication is either Drosselmeyer was just in another kingdom that technologically was way behind everyone else and then moved to the modern day kingdom, or this happened hundreds of years ago and he lives forever. The mouse
And the Nutcracker
doesn't
has stayed the same
age.
because he's a Nutcracker.
Yeah,
and the Nutcracker, now that the curse has been broken at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, will be like a sequel to Encino Man, where they
Yeah.
like de-thawed someone from technology hundreds of years old.
Why, what is this you call it? Medicine? Normally we just stick a leech to our neck and the blood goes away.
I prefer to think that Drosselmeyer just moved a single town over. But yeah, I do have a bunch of things that I found from the original story that I feel like are interesting to bring up. Should I bring those up now?
Sure.
Okay. Clara, the main girl of the movie, her name used to be Marie, which I think is interesting. Originally, when I mentioned the Mouse King when I was watching the movie, I called him the Rat King, which is a very different creature. A Rat King is a real-life thing that happens when rats' tails get stuck together.
Well, I don't know if it's a real life thing because it doesn't actually happen. I think that's a myth.
You think so? Whatever. Anyways, so rats' tails get stuck together and they're stuck to move as like a single entity. The original Mouse King had 7 heads and it was supposed to be like a Rat King. So he had 7 crowns and 7 heads and it was like an abomination creature. In the end of this movie, the Nutcracker is cured by killing the Mouse King, which doesn't feel like it makes much sense. The Mouse King had no attachment to the curse. The Mouse Queen made the curse, and the Mouse King is what cures him. In the original story, the Nutcracker is cured by the fact that Marie, or Clara, loves him despite the fact that he might not be pretty and he's a doll or whatever. Pavlova is the name of the kitten in the movie, which was definitely inspired by one of the most famous ballerinas of all time, Anna Pavlova from Russia. And finally, instead of a blue cheese cake, it's lard for the king's royal sausage.
Do you want to eat that, Chance? Lard for the king's royal sausage?
No thanks. Kyle and I looked into it, and the agreed upon theory is that there are lots of museum displays of rat kings, but those are highly debated because those were only around the 1800s, in which fake cryptids were really common.
So it's like a
and there's
jackalope
never
setting?
been one since then. Exactly. So maybe they happen in the real world, but that's really highly debated.
That makes
Because
sense.
most people would also agree that if rats were tied together, they would just chew off their tail and get away.
Yeah, that makes sense. Plausible, but also has plausible deniability. More like possible, I guess.
More like possums?
More like possums.
The Possum King.
I think they would be more likely to get a possum king than a rat king. Possums like tie their tails around branches and stuff like that, don't they? They like hang from branches.
Okay. Are we ready to continue?
We are continuing.
This is part of the podcast, John.
This
We're
is
talking
the
about rat
most
kings.
important part of the podcast.
Yeah, Possum King. Praise Beethoven.
Oh!
It's been a while.
It had to happen once.
It had to happen so Kylan can claim it as his bit.
I haven't attempted to do the bit in several episodes. Thank you
No,
very
you
much.
mean John beat you to it several
I
episodes.
honestly, Beethoven has kind of left my mind.
You know
He
what,
really
you
says
guys?
that for the guy who shouted praise Beethoven halfway through, so he'd be the first to do it.
I
We
just
were
said it.
in Walmart and I found a DVD collection of all the Beethoven movies. And there was one that we didn't even know about.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we had counted 8 last time, so I think there might be 9.
Oh my gosh.
It was like a Christmas or a...
There
We
should
already
not
knew
be
about
that
the
many
Christmas
Beethoven
special.
movies.
That dog must have lived a very long life for him to make all those movies.
John, think about how many puppies they put in that movie.
Think about
how many of those are Beethoven 2 or 3
how many
or 4.
godlike powers that dog has. You don't think long life wouldn't be one of them?
Yes, super big.
Oh, you're implying that he traded his years for phenomenal cosmic power.
Phenomenal cosmic power.
Or as Beethoven would say, "Ruff."
Does Beethoven really even bark? He doesn't talk very much.
Yes, he does. Remember when they're pouring beer on him and he
Yes.
pulls the house down? He's barking at them.
He's warning them in his ancient
Yeah,
tongue.
he's saying,
No, he's-
phenomenal cosmic powers.
Yeah, he's doing ancient chants to gain his power.
Yeah.
Chant, Boy, skull, and orange
Ahudore,
Dad, you're making fun of us for making this a bad episode, and you're over here singing Grinch carols just for the sake of it. You want to
This
say that
might
this is a
be-
bad episode? Look in the mirror, buddy.
Do you have something to say?
This
Doug?
episode is unhinged.
I'm having a really hard time commenting on this episode because I genuinely really love Tchaikovsky's work. I have some of the Nutcracker on my phone because it's such an amazing song.
Yeah, the music's so
there'll be
good.
parts of it I'm like, wow, this movie's really good. And then I realize it's just because the soundtrack is a masterpiece and the animation is okay sometimes.
We rarely elevate this podcast to be something worthwhile, but I feel like John actually could talk a little bit about the music from Nutcracker. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us, John? As someone who's performed these works, is there any insight that you'd like to share with us?
Nope.
And this is why our podcast rarely elevates to anything special.
John, would you you like to talk about something meaningful and serious that could possibly raise awareness for our listeners? Nah, that's not funny.
John, the way you said nope. Nope.
Nope.
This episode sucks.
Agree to disagree. I wasn't on board before, but now I am.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have anything particularly insightful to say. I have watched the ballet. I don't know if you remember, Tim, but there was I don't know if it was like on ice or something, but we'd watch it on TV at Christmas sometimes.
Yeah, they had
Might
a
have been,
little
like,
castle set.
Yeah, so I mean, I have these early memories of the Nutcracker as a kid with this cartoon and that ice skating thing, and then as an adult, taking in the ballet and playing some of the music. The music is just, I mean, I don't think there's much point in getting technical with it, but it's, like Chance said, it's gorgeous. And it's interesting how reminiscent it is of Christmas. In that story, it is Christmas time, but...
When we were watching the movie, Kai commented on that. He's like, I think every Christmas movie has this song playing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, John. Somewhere along the lines, even though that was probably not the original intention, it became synonymous with Christmas time.
There's a couple of songs in this movie that make me realize that the major way I ingested Nutcracker content was through a Nutcracker Tom and Jerry special.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And semi-recently, Dad was talking about a friend of his who happens to be a voice actor. And they have a large resume. They voice one of the ponies in My Little Pony. But I was scrolling through their IMDb, and that Nutcracker special showed up on the list, and they played the little gray French mouse. And that just absolutely blew my mind, because I watched that movie so much.
The movie Kylan and I are both referencing, people at home, you won't be able to see this, but it does look like this, which I think really adds to the mystique and wonder of this movie that defines Kylan and I's view of Christmas.
This should be the thumbnail of this.
The thumbnail for a different movie.
Yeah. Audience at home, if you look in the bottom left corner, you...
One of my favorite songs of all time is Waltz of the Flowers, which comes from the Nutcracker.
It's like song after song. I do really adore the Nutcracker music, and I don't feel like there's much to argue about that.
Folks at home, don't watch this movie. Go listen to the Nutcracker and feel yourself fulfilled.
There's not going to be a lot of people, I think, who've seen this movie, in all honesty. Essentially, at the time, Warner Bros. Didn't have Warner Bros. Animation. This does look like Warner Bros. Animation, if that makes sense. But at the time, they hired a Canadian animation company called Lacewood to do the animation for this movie. Unfortunately, it cost them about $8.5 million to make this movie, and its box office take was only 3.7.
Oof.
We've talked about advertising and stuff coming into play too. This was not even close to making its money back. And I don't think that, in all honesty, even if it had been in more theaters, that it would be remembered any more favorably. It's got a 14% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yikes.
I don't know if it's that bad. The problem with this story, as Kai's already kind of referenced, is actually a problem with the original story. It just kind of dies in the third act. For me, my childhood memories are of the toys fighting the mice.
Which, in all honesty, is the most anticlimactic battle of all time, because they'll like shoot each other and the bullets will like bounce off of the mice and the toys will like fall over and get back up.
They
It's like
can't hurt
nothing's
each
happening.
other. It's very dumb. But that is still probably the best part of this movie for entertainment purposes.
And it's a ballet. It makes sense for it to not be constantly filling with action or whatever, because it's about the dance.
And I will say that when they transcend from Toy Castle to Mythical Castle, the animation there is very good. There are other strengths that this movie has, But when you get into that third act, one by one, they just toyify. And then...
Well, the Mouse King shows up and he looks like he's fueled by some kind of primeval dark magic. Like,
And then
Ernest
he falls
Troll
off a cliff
style.
on his own.
Yeah, he's got
I
red
do
in his
remember
eyes
as
and
a
he's...
kid thinking the Mouse King was very scary.
But
Not
he doesn't
John's
do
level of very
anything.
scary, but like, oh, they drew him to elicit fear. And then he kind of walks off a cliff.
Yeah, he just walks towards the main girl and then keeps on walking off a cliff.
This movie probably deserves better than 14%, but the tragic thing is that if you were to ask me to make a version of this movie that would get a 95%,
You would have to rewrite the full movie.
exactly, I don't think you can do that with the material
And-
that exists.
When it comes to an adaptation like this, what are you even rating? The animation? I mean, I guess pacing and stuff like that.
If I was going to rewrite this movie, you'd have to lean into the ballet's strengths. If they gave us a silent movie with good acting and Tchaikovsky's soundtrack, that could have been above higher
So
14%, you know?
the issue with this is Chance is just describing the Tom and Jerry special. Because the Tom and Jerry special...
They talk in Tom and Jerry.
No.
Where does it
But
have on Rotten Tomatoes?
I can look that up.
So I have a very different take. Tim, in the intro, you called something rose-colored glasses. Is there like an opposite for rose-colored glasses? Like, what color is pessimism or sportism?
There's a color that...
Poor sportism?
Naysayerism?
it's a color brown that is decided to be so bad that it makes things unappealing. And that's what they put on nicotine products. So nicotine glasses is the correct answer. By the way, Tom and Jerry and Nutcracker Tale got a 64% on Rotten Tomatoes. Who's laughing now?
So, yes, rewatching this, I do realize the pacing is quite odd. They spend a whole bunch of time on very menial things and then really speed up the things that should be more meaningful. And honestly, I think in big part of it's like, oh, we want to make sure these songs are in the movie, and so we have to let them run their full course. So the ending does feel rushed, but that last scene, you guys talk about it falling apart, my heart was falling apart in all the right ways.
John paused the movie when we were watching it just to say, guys, get ready for what happens next.
I handed them tissues. It is so emotional. This song, Pas de Deux, takes up the whole final scene. And so the Nutcracker and Clara are dancing, and then he's like, okay, you want to stay with us, right? You want to live here forever? And she's like, oh, I'm having a really good time, but I don't know, like, I feel like I should go. Now his heart's being broken, and all the other toys are like, that's the moment when they start turning back into toys, is because she doesn't want to stay with them, or she doesn't believe in them anymore, or whatever that is. She has to grow up. So it's kind of like this idea of she can't stay in her childhood. She wants to be a ballet dancer. And so she has to move on with her life and become an adult. And the toys are like falling over. She's getting upset and sad. And then all of a sudden the Mouse King shows up and he's like rabid. She's throwing cupcake after cupcake. I'm describing to the listeners.
She's throwing cupcake after cupcake.
Good dessert after different European dessert.
Maybe the cupcake got in his eyes and he couldn't see, so he fell off the cliff.
That's why his eyes were so red. They were bloodshot from all...
Oh man, I've already got pink eye. Don't need more stuff in my eyes.
Possibly one of the best musical pieces of all time continues to play. The Nutcracker's like, Clara, Clara. He wants to save her from the Mouse King, but he's turning back into a toy because she doesn't want to stay with him. So then she's actually woken back up to the real world. She's running. She goes to Uncle Drosselmeyer's shop, and she's like, was it all true? I don't know. Was it a dream? I thought I saw you last night, and she's just so confused. And he calls his nephew from the other room, and there is the Nutcracker. And he walks up to her, and he says hi, and she says hi.
Wait,
and
your interpretation is that he is the Nutcracker?
No, that's
Well, what's your
Kevin.
interpretation?
He threw the Nutcracker in the dumpster. Fritz broke it, but he's like, I know she'll be distracted if I bring a boy around.
But he hands her a fixed Nutcracker.
We don't know if that's real. She has a concussion.
She ran in there like a raving lunatic. Was it real? Was it real? She's like, you've been concussed.
Why are you out of bed?
She's like a bandage over her head. Like, yeah, she hit her head against the cabinet. She
was
should
in
not
a medically induced coma.
To those
End credit
listening
scene
to
where
this
it like
podcast,
zooms out and then it's like, and what really happened, and it just shows Clara face down in the snow, blood pouring out from her head wound.
go watch this on YouTube. Just fast forward to like the last 15 minutes. Just hit play and you will take in one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen.
I am not discrediting the music, John. I'm just saying the animation is nothing to write home about. And I think that you're putting a lot of your own emotions into that last scene. I do think the animation of the Prince of the Dolls turning into a doll and fighting to try and see her while he's morphing back into an emotionless object is very powerful. But it's just strange to me that the mouse almost died from their big epic fight. He could have died, but instead he made it all the way to the kingdom of whatever they are. And
Probably rode on a duck to get there.
yeah. Yeah. And then he kills himself. It just is very strange. It's very strange.
Yeah, and because they're like dancing and this like red film covers the screen. And M next to me literally said, I can't tell what's happening on screen.
We watched a pretty bad version of this on YouTube.
Yeah. I think in its prime, it looked closer to the Great Mouse Detectives animation style, but we are not.
No,
in its
you
prime.
can't talk about the Great Mouse Detective. I like
No,
that
no,
movie.
no. I'm just saying. I
Shut
think.
up.
No,
I
you're
think
allowed to like this movie. Like I said, I still like parts of it. And as much as Kai is right that the whole big war between the toys and the mice is completely pointless, the way they draw the mice, each one of them has a different character design. They're so freaky, fat, skinny, ugly. Like, I love some of the components of this movie. I pointed
was
out
gonna
to
say, one of the
Kai.
things I really like watching the toys move is actually really fun, especially the soldiers, because every one of them, when they take a step, they will do a 90% human motion and then jitter as if they're like, oh, I have wooden joints that don't work entirely. It's a good job.
I actually think
They're
that
very fun to watch.
the drawings, the designs, all of it is very strong. But something I pointed out to Kai while we were watching is they do not do any shadows. There's no shadow work whatsoever.
Anywhere.
Oh, now that you mention it, yeah.
Every
totally right.
character is completely flat. At first glance, the animation is very good. Like, maybe as good as a Disney movie. And probably, I can't imagine how much time it would save to never do a single shadow or shading. But that does hurt the final product.
Yeah.
The Nutcracker is voiced by Kiefer Sutherland. This was his first animated movie role, but of course by this point he would have been famous for many things. I love the Young Guns movies, which he is in both of. I don't know what he's done in the last while. There was a resurgence of Kiefer Sutherland when he did the 24 show, which was pretty cool. Essentially, it was a TV show in real time. Each season was 24 episodes, and each episode was an hour of the day. So the whole season was one day, and you followed these characters in real time while they tried to stop a terrorist
8
attack.
hours of sleeping.
That's right. Bedtime, everyone.
Well, I was just going to say, maybe we jump to closing, I was going to say.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, shoot. I had a cookie, but I think I have one.
Do you want to start with your cookie? You're
Yeah,
already
I
talking
was
about
going
it.
to say cannonball cookie breaks your teeth.
Yeah.
Or sorry, cupcake
Accurate.
gives you pink eye.
This
Fair
movie will
enough.
give
Throwing
you pink
cookie.
eye. Throwing cookie.
Yeah, but in all honesty, I think there's definitely better versions of the Nutcracker story.
You're just saying that because you love that Tom and Jerry version.
You want to do Bullied Nostalgia? Next year, let's watch Tom and Jerry.
I will not be revisiting this movie. I do think that there's something there. I'm not saying that this is a bad movie. It deserves better than the 14% it has on Rotten Tomato. But unless you're one of those people who's trying to find new experiences to watch at Christmas time, or you're trying to recapture great Christmas movies that have come and gone, this isn't in the top 10 Christmas movies for me. The music is incredible. It's a worthwhile watch, but the amount of work it takes to find a version of this movie that isn't garbledy-goop on YouTube is not worth watching.
Tim, do you have a lot of childhood memories and emotions to this? Does the little Tim want to come out and talk?
I do love the lighting of the Christmas tree in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's like so small and not anything that we were going to talk about, but it is a core memory that I have. You know, we decorate our trees and we plug them in and all the lights go on. And I think for me, when I was little, the idea that once upon a time people had to light candles in their trees was this epiphany to me. Mm-hmm. And I still think that aesthetically, that is a gorgeous portrayal of a Christmas tree. Like I said, there are things about this movie that mean something to me. And this is a completely different conversation about lost media. We live in a world now where it's harder and harder to access so many of these pieces of art that have been created over the years. And it's definitely not specific to the Nutcracker Prince. But as these movies, TV shows, video games, music, all these things that have been created, there's so much out there that things get lost. In my other podcast with Eric, our first episode is talking about Miami Connection, which was a movie that was lost for 30 years. So it's one of those things where it's just become really hard to access some of these things. And you can watch this on YouTube, but it's not good quality. And so in order to find this, you'd have to put in a fair amount of effort, I think.
Or look through my mom's movie collection.
You can buy a DVD off of us for $300.
Yeah.
Are you not going to ask AI?
AI doesn't have opinions. And I think that's very clear whenever Dad asks it to review something. What do you think of this movie? Is this a good movie? And it'll be like, did you like it? It's like, yes. Then it was good. And it's like, I don't need an AI to tell me that I liked something if I told it I liked something.
Yeah. So I will say, John, I did try and chat with AI a little bit about this movie to see what results I got, because I do think that that's a fun idea. But I agree with Kylan. It gave the most boring non-answers. So not this episode is the answer, John.
You could always ask AI things like, my brother says I should re-explore my childhood and give my inner child a chance.
She'll give a non-answer, I guarantee you.
Yes. It'll
Is it
say,
my turn to give my inner child a chance?
no chance, we're talking. Let the grown-ups talk. The AI will definitely say something like, this could be a fun experience. It'll just regurgitate the things that you've said back to you.
Does that mean you wrote a letter, John?
No, I certainly didn't. I thought of that as soon as we started this episode. But yes, I think last time I said that I would write a letter in advance and then write a letter after. Was that kind of the idea?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, dear the Nutcracker Prince, dear Canadian animators, thank you for making a movie that made me feel so many things as a child. That makes me feel so many things when I rewatch it again. And when I hear this music at Christmas, I think of you. Thank you.
Written that like a letter to Santa, but...
You kind of wrote it like a love letter. Whenever I hear
Am I
this
allowed
song,
to
I'm thinking of
give
you.
my statement on this movie now?
Yeah, go
Or
ahead,
is John
Chance.
still letting out his inner child?
Well, he can always do that later. Go ahead.
I am gonna be harsh about this one, John. as much as this is going to pain you, I think this movie is a 2, and that is held up primarily from Tchaikovsky, not because of the merit that comes from this movie.
You know what, John?
Ultimately, I know they did their best, but...
That's not even a diss. 95% of the movies we watch, he scores as a 2, so...
Yeah.
So, the next episode is something that is near and dear to my heart. Essentially, the back half of this season, we're going to try and hit on things that are specific to each of the people on this podcast. In the past, Kai has talked a lot about Follow That Bird.
It's fun to be in an upside-down world. There's fish that fall out of the sea. Upside-down clothes to make everyone... Yeah, sorry.
Save it for the episode.
Yeah.
We're going to try and hit on that. Chance last season talked about how he'd much rather watch Treasure Planet than Titan AE. So we're going to try and hit on things that are personal to individuals on the show here.
What's personal to you?
Yes, that is next episode. We are doing Silverhawks, which is a cartoon that the only reason why anybody else on this podcast knows about it is because I still love it so much.
Yeah.
That's a cartoon from the 80s.
If you turned a rock ballad by Journey into a TV show and gave no context.
That's pretty much it.
That's pretty accurate. That's one of the talking points next episode for sure. The show is bonkers.
Weird. Yeah, it's insane.
But I love it. We opened...
Tim, where can we watch Silverhawks?
That is a great question. It cannot be streamed, unfortunately, as far as I know. Episodes can be purchased from any digital storefront. We opened this episode with Aliens First Christmas. How do people want to close it?
This has been a weird episode all the way through. From Aliens First Christmas to that random bout of Beethoven.
Thank you, Chance. I love it. I would probably say something like... I was going to quote a hateful remark from Patrick Swayze in Christmas in Wonderland, but that worked too. That was good.
Classic family movie.
Charlac. But Charlac.
Charlac.
Praise Beethoven.
Maybe we watch Beethoven's Christmas special next year.
There's
no nostalgia. No one's ever seen it. Okay, wait. Let's talk themes here. Halloween is repressed nostalgia. Maybe Christmas could be only Christmas movies we've never seen before.
That's going to be tough because of our mom.
There's new Christmas movies every year.
Yeah, we just have to go to Hallmark, Chance.
So many Christmas Hallmark movies get filmed in Langley right here.
But that wouldn't work because Tim's already watched most of the Hallmark Christmas movies.
Dad.
I'm hiding in the background of all of them.
No, Dad, you have to become an actor for a Hallmark movie.
Oh, we could watch it on the podcast.
Yeah. We have to be the movie.
Okay.
The nostalgia isn't for the movie itself, but the fun we had recording it.
Maybe the nostalgia was the friends we made along the way.
Maybe we should stop this podcast.
Tim,
I like it you didn't say
on board
episode.
with you making your new life goal to be in a Hallmark Christmas movie.
Chance, I like how you didn't say episode. Maybe we should just stop.
I noticed
Maybe 2 seasons was enough.
This podcast has run its course.
Okay,
Okay, so we're going to be there in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, just a heads up, Tim. I think you already know this, but Mom also planned that relatives are celebrating Grandma's birthday.
The relatives are selling Grandma?
Yes, that is exactly.
You're right. I did have that in my calendar.
How much do you think that we can sell her for?
I feel uncomfortable if this is recorded.
It is being recorded.
Please do not include it in the podcast.
Grandma Mackie will hear this.
Yeah, right. None of our family cares about this podcast.
Dad kept in my heavy eggnog joke, so there's nothing stopping this.
Yeah, we're fearless. We make heavy eggnog jokes.
We're fearless. We
Sorry,
make
just noticing
heavy
you're having
eggnog
automatic feedback
jokes.
on
That could be
helping
on a
out.
t-shirt.
Yeah, I'm fearless. I make heavy eggnog jokes. I made a heavy eggnog joke, and all I got was this stupid t-shirt.